Now, China has been the world's biggest steel producer for many years, but foreign and domestic factors are forcing it to trim its output. And that, combined with strong demand from Chinese construction firms, has led to a surge in prices. Let's take a look. One example is the price of steel reinforcement bars, also known as rebar. Their prices jumped in March after the government announced steel production cuts, and have continued to go up since. They're up about 22% so far this year. But despite any cuts, China remains dominant. Look at these. Latest figures show China producing nearly 9 times as much steel as the next biggest manufacturer, Japan, and it's twice as big as all the other 7 biggest manufacturers combined. Now, rising prices have been good for some of the world's biggest steel companies. ArcelorMittal recently reported a 19% jump in earnings. India's Tata Steel swung back to profits after a loss the same time last year. And ThyssenKrupp announced a 14% jump in its orders. But politicians are still keeping up the pressure on China and other high-volume producers as well. In May, the European Commission imposed new anti-dumping duties on Chinese steel pipes and tubes. And a month earlier, the US said it would investigate how foreign steel producers are hurting American jobs.
We're going to fight for American workers and American-made steel, and that's beginning immediately. For decades, America has lost our jobs and our factories to unfair foreign trade. Today, I'm directing the Department of Commerce to immediately prioritize the investigation that began yesterday and really long before that, because Wilbur and I have been working on this for a long time, into foreign steel arriving into our markets, and to submit a report on the effects of these foreign steel products on the national security of the United States. It's not just a price.
Now, one of the reasons for China's tough crackdown on steel production appears to be air pollution. Steel plants use enormous amounts of power, and much of it comes from burning coal. Now, meanwhile, Beijing has reportedly been holding meetings with top steel company executives and regulators as prices surge. Let's get more on this now from our editor-at-large, Craig Copetas, who's in Paris. Craig, great to have you with us, as always. What more do we know about why China is cutting back steel production?
What I'm hearing are these cutbacks have very little to do with finances and everything to do with health. Part of it, I'm told, goes back about 10 years to a World Bank report which said that some 760,000 premature deaths were taking place annually in China because of this pollution. And at the time, the World Bank was told by China's environmental agency that those statistics should be removed from the report because, quote, the possible impact on social stability, unquote. This is pollution is a political problem for Beijing. This is not a Tiananmen Square type situation where they can send in tanks to quell people who are upset. Right now, only 1% of the country's more than 550 million people can actually breathe air considered safe by the European Union. The health statistics go on and on. The pollution has spread internationally as far as Seoul, South Korea, Tokyo, and according to some studies, as far as the west coast of the United States. China has a major environmental problem on its hands that could eventually topple the government. At COP21 here in Paris 2 years ago, the Chinese were very well aware of this, and that's why the Chinese have gotten behind COP21 and environmental change big time. And in this instance, I tend to believe the Chinese, because the last thing they want are riots in the streets over health.
That is a good point, Craig. But nonetheless, China has come under intense pressure from both the US and the EU to cut steel output. Is there any indication that these cuts are a response to that pressure?
As are from what I'm hearing, and it's all speculation, as you know, coming out of China, even by the people I talk to there, that is a byproduct of this. You know, the theme in every market, in every industry these days is environment. We used to talk about sustainability. Sustainability has given way to changeability. These people have to change, markets have to change, industries have to change, and factories have to change. And the Chinese realize that. So if they get some political benefit from the United States on this by, cutting back on their steel production, all the better. But this is all about domestic politics and domestic health in China. I have no doubt about that, by the way.
Nonetheless, though, that pressure also is coming from steel companies in both the US and the EU. As we just saw, they have benefited from these rising steel prices. Is there much political influence from these companies on their governments?
Oh, absolutely, Azar. And I think, again, I want to bring this back to the environmental issue. Chinese steel factories and the coal-fired furnaces and the electricity there are not the cleanest way to make stuff. The West knows how to manufacture things much cleaner and more efficiently. It may be a little bit more expensive, but what China's going through now, and I bet you're going to see this in the next 2 years, they're going to start retooling. They have to. The pollution is too bad, so they're going to take some losses and some hits for a few years and then come back like gangbusters. There's only so long that you can go when the Chinese Ministry of Health says that cancer is China's leading cause of death every year from ambient pollution from these factories.
Craig Copetas in Paris, thank you ever so much.